All right. Hi guys. Hi friends. Hi Jiu Jitsu Yoga, all the communities out there. Welcome. My name is Florence Sophia. I am your host today. And I'm very happy to have an amazing guest today, Professor Marco Costa, joining us for an amazing conversation. He's a 4th degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. He's the leader of the Body of 4 team. He's also the host of Coffee with Costa. And last but not least, he's 3 times Canadian National Jiu Jitsu coach. Thank you for being here, Marco. Really appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me. I'm excited and I can't wait.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So this is an amazing space. I mean, I'm speechless looking at this design.
Yeah, I know, right?
Can you tell us how did all this come about and when did you come in this new location?
We came into this new spot at the beginning of 2019, so just the beginning of last year. I had been at my other location for about 7-8 years or so, and I was always looking to grow a little bit more, to grow my business, to have more members and so on, and provide. Obviously, there's always that element of trying to provide better for my family.
Mm-hmm.
But I always knew that I didn't want to do it by myself. I understood enough about this industry and this business that it's a lot of work doing on your own, especially when you want to grow to this kind of level.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just waiting to find the right person to work with, and I was very fortunate to have one of my black belts, Ram. We sat down and we discussed it, and he was okay with the idea, and then we just snowballed really quickly because we spoke about it in the summer of 2018,
Mm-hmm.
like the end of summer 2018, and by the beginning of 2019 we were being here. So it was like really fast.
Good fit.
And the mural, it took a while to get it done. The artist, Mitch, we went back and forth a few times, and then, I was very patient, and then he was very patient, and eventually the right time came, and he's like, I'm going to do it. And I gave him our artistic freedom to do whatever he wanted, because he's super talented and a very accredited street artist. And I just gave him free rein to do what he wanted, and this is what he wanted to do.
Amazing.
I mean, I know, trust me guys, the video doesn't do it justice. If you see it live, it's incredibly detailed, and it looks so real, and he's so talented, super talented, and I'm grateful that he decided to put it on our wall. So
Nice. And if anybody wants to book him, at least 1 year in advance, right?
probably, yes, 1 year in advance.
So
So
tell us.
if you want to reach out, his Instagram tag is at OMEN 514 at OMEN 514 on Instagram, and then you can have some work done in your schools as well with those professors out there.
Absolutely. Make sure you follow him and support his art. But Marco, tell us about your journey in martial arts. When did you start? How did it all start? When did you find that was your passion, your path?
Even as it goes back to where even to where I'm from. I'm from the Azores Islands, St. Michael, and even as a little kid, I was a big fan of martial arts movies.
Okay.
And in this little town that I was from, I used to be allowed to go to the movies, and they would show 2 types of movies very frequently, which is very, very interesting. They had the Chinese martial arts movies with all the the action and the crazy.
Bruce Lee?
Bruce Lee and all these other crazy movies, and they had Bollywood movies.
Okay.
Which was very interesting. So I'm still to this day a fan of Bollywood movies and a big fan of martial arts movies. And that's how it started. I've always wanted to do martial arts, but there was almost nothing where I was from. And if there was, it would be in the city, and I was nowhere near the city, and my parents probably couldn't afford it anyway. So when I came to Canada, it was kind of like out of my mind. I didn't really think about it that much. It was just I was too busy being a regular teenager.
Yeah.
But when I turned 17, a Taekwondo school opened not too far away from where I lived. And I asked my parents, about it, and they were dead set against it. They did not want me to do it. They were very traditional people, and I just didn't think it was a good idea. But I had a part-time job, so I'm like, fine, I'm going to pay for it myself. And that's what I did. I worked hard, and I started in Taekwondo. I'll try to kind of fast track a little bit. I started with Taekwondo, then I went to Muay Thai because I wanted something a little bit more
Impact.
yeah, I wanted something a little bit more real with the fighting.
Right.
I wasn't a big fan of the point sparring. And then in 1993, UFC 1. You watch Royce Gracie do his thing, and I was just like, I want to do what that guy's doing. There was no Jiu Jitsu in Canada at the time, no BJJ in Canada, so I went with the closest thing I could find, which was judo. So I did judo for a while, and I really enjoyed it. And I've been very fortunate, like every stage of my martial arts career, I've really had good instructors and a good environment and good training, so it was always positive environment. And then eventually, of course, 97-ish, 98-ish, I think 97, 98 was when I met Monkey. We met at the judo club, and then we went to, we heard that Professor Shaw at the time was bringing a Brazilian gentleman from Brazil, and that was Master Barry. And then he set up an official affiliate, like we were officially affiliated under Master Barry. So that was back in 1998. And that was it. From then on, it was strictly BJJ and MMA. And a lot of our focus back then was MMA. It's not so much nowadays. The sport is kind of taken its own little world. But that's basically how kind of like the Coles notes, the fast. A lot happened, but that was.
And how was your progression from white belt to the different color belt to black belt, where you are today, and what would you say were your 3 biggest lessons and setbacks, perhaps, along the way?
I think the normal setbacks that everybody goes through, if I have to bring up setbacks first, is a couple of them. One, injuries. There was a lot of injuries, especially with MMA. Very impactful, and we didn't know. Remember, everything was new and experimental. We didn't have Master Baron here full time with us, so there was a lot of trial and error. So a lot of injuries. So that's always very challenging to try and come back on the mat. Sometimes you come back too soon and make things worse. And the other challenge is plateaus. You hit a plateau, and then you feel like you're not getting better, and everybody else is progressing, and you're not. And a lot of it is just how do you deal with those things, right? So those were the 2 biggest challenges as far as like what you have to overcome. But I think there's certain aspects to the belts that bring you to certain stages of growth within Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right? Of course, as a white belt, it's challenging, you're getting beat up all the time. It's a different world now as it was back then. I'm referring to my world where now it's way more accommodating for white belts. Back then it was like you're thrown into the lions and good luck. Right? If you survive, you stay. If you don't survive, you leave. Right? So that was tough. You had to really want to be there. You had to enjoy a certain aspect of fighting to be there in that environment. So as a white belt, like you get beat up a lot. As a blue belt, you start to kind of like, hey, wait a minute, I'm not too bad. I'm starting to learn a few things, and I'm beating up on the white belts that are coming in. So you start to build that confidence. I think at purple belt is when you have the most creativity. That's when most guys develop their own way of. They start to direct their game to what they like. Right? And everybody likes different things.
And they recognize their strength and
yes.
weaknesses.
You start to realize what you're good at, what you're not good at. And brown belt, now you're pretty confident. There isn't that much difference between brown belt and black belt, other than just time and experience. But I think that if I have to say anything, if you can just be patient and be persistent and just keep going through and push through to those plateaus and recover from your injuries. If you can just get to that deep into that purple belt, it's a pretty good gauge that you'll make it to black. Right?
So the Jiu-Jitsu community is known for a lot of guys or girls getting into blue belt and then giving up. So what would your advice be for them?
I think what happens with that, why a lot of blue belts quit, is because when you're a white belt and everything is new and exciting, and you just want to get that color belt, you just don't want to be the white belt anymore, right? That when you get to that blue belt, it's almost like a sigh of relief, like, I made it. Right? And then you're like, what next? What do I do now? And then you also, another realization is like, well, I made it to blue belt, but it's not getting any easier. Right? It's actually harder because people are, like when you go into purple, people are really good, brown are really good. So you start like, oh man, I'm just scratching the surface. Do I really want to put in as much effort as I did to get blue? Do I want to put that much effort to get purple? And time and energy? And I think people just get discouraged. And they don't, like, that honeymoon phase is gone, and now it's like, oh man, I really got to keep working. And then some people just don't want to do it. They can't handle it.
So over your journey, who would you say were the main influencer or people you looked up on that helped you keep going on that journey and kept inspiring you?
Well, I think that this is going to sound maybe, I don't know, I think everybody expects you to say all these big names. You know what I mean? And all these people you look up to on TV or the champions of the time. And obviously, I admire those people very much as well. But my inspirations, my true inspirations, were my teammates. You know? Because we were in basically creating history, and we were like at the beginning of everything that was going on at both MMA and BJJ in Canada. So everything was exciting, everything was new, and just to see, if you look at the list of all the guys I've trained with and the accomplishments that they've had, I was just so proud of being involved with them and being a part of being literally in the front row. I cornered a lot of these guys for their professional fights, so I'm like in the front row. I get to have a say in what they're doing, and that was super inspirational for me. And those were the guys I looked up to. Like literally, I'm not joking. My teammates were like the guys I was like big fan of my own training partners, you know. And I think that's important. I think that's sometimes that's missing in the BJJ culture. Your teammates are the second most important thing in your BJJ journey. Yes, you're trying to learn Jiu Jitsu for the art form, but the relationships that you build with your instructors and your teammates, the trust, and that is by far, you know, for me personally, the best experiences that I've had. Because you rely on your teammates, especially when you need to train, or whether it's competition, or whether it's motivation, and knowing that you have all your team behind you. Yes, absolutely.
Any days, it's an amazing feeling.
It's very empowering. Very empowering. I've had lots of success because they give you the confidence. Knowing that you have them in your corner, you just feel going very confident. I was very successful in the things that I've done at the time because of my teammates and my instructors. Like, I'm not discrediting the professors; they have extreme value in the process. Obviously, you know they're very, very important in that. But the teammates are a big part of it for sure.
So if there was one experience you had, you could pick from your journey so far, which was one of your favorite, and you could relive it, what would it be?
There's so many.
We can pick on one.
There's so many because, like, for me, I look at like my life as chapters. You know, chapters of like there was my traditional martial arts with the Taekwondo, Muay Thai, and Judo, and then the BJJ, and then fighting professional in MMA, and then going into BJJ, then going into cornering MMA fighters, then going into cornering and coaching my team and developing a team, and then coaching the national team. It's like, how do you pick one?
If you could go back to the past and redo something or change something, Would you do that? Oh,
Yes,
okay. So what would it?
I would have fought more.
Okay.
I only had one professional fight, and then I had an incident with my neck that was basically that, and a few other factors forced me to retire from professional fighting. And if I could go back and change a few things, would be two things. I would have taken way more MMA fights, and I would have gone to Brazil. I never really had a chance to go down with the guys. I just couldn't afford it at the time, and then once you have a family, that's even more impossible. So those are the two things if I could change, I would have fought more.
Yeah.
I would have competed a lot more.
Yeah.
And I would have gone to Brazil.
And probably do some yoga.
Yes. Yes.
We'll talk
We're
about
gonna
it in a bit.
We're gonna get to that.
We'll get to
Absolutely. It's cliche. It's been spoken a lot of times. And again, we'll go in deeper a little bit. But like in those days, with the MMA mindset and tough guy mindset, you wouldn't do yoga.
Yeah.
You would get picked on and beat up, and it was just I think it was just one of those things. You didn't understand it enough. You didn't understand what it does or appreciate what it could do for you. You just thought of it like it would be that it was for women, and that was it, right?
Yeah.
But I think we are way more educated now, for sure.
Great. Well, we'll come back to that topic. So moving on to the competition topic, when you think about your athletes, what makes them so accomplished?
I think they have a good foundation, right? You have to be, I'm very picky about teaching them the basics. So fundamentals are super important. Like understanding the foundation of the sport, the basics of the sport. And then the other is making them understand the realities of how tough competition can be. So there's no surprises. Like I make it clear, and I create environments of high intensity training. So there's no surprises when they compete. Like whatever that could happen to them in a competition sense, they've experienced it here. So when they go there, they are prepared both technically, mentally. I do a lot of reinforcement and talking and explaining things. It's not just technique based. And I put them through hell to make sure that they are prepared. But also the emphasis on that they have to understand that it is a lot about being physically ready, so physically fit, so strength and conditioning and so on. All of those things are super, super crucial too, and again, environment, supportive environment from the teammates, that is also a big factor. And again, it's the training environment that you create both as technically, mentally, and to prepare them as best as you can for that world. And the competition world is getting more and more difficult and more intense. And you can still do competition for fun, but I make them aware of hey, if you're going to do it for fun, that's great. Win or lose, no problem. You got my support. But don't be delusional about thinking that you're going to win the whole thing. Right? If you haven't put the same amount of effort that some of these other individuals put in, the odds are not in your favor. But if you want to go out there, test yourself, have fun, win or lose, that's okay too. Right? But if you want to win, this is what you have to do. And one of the main things is also they need to sacrifice a lot. And I think sometimes that's where we lose some people is because they just can't. The main thing you have to sacrifice is a lot of time. Right? If you don't have the time, then it's
So how long would you say someone who is going for the win, for the gold, needs to put time in in terms of hours, weeks, months, and what's the regimen look like?
I always recommend minimum 3 times a week. If you can do more, do more. Obviously, you gotta still have to watch your diet and what you eat, and if you can squeeze in besides your training on here with the technical training, then if you can spend a little bit more time doing your strength conditioning, so if you do some cardio is super important. So if you can do a lot of cardio, whether it's running, biking, treadmill, something to push your heart rate, and then a little bit of weight training, but to make you stronger, not to make you, big or like not bodybuilding. We're talking about like physical strength. Ideally, 6 weeks. If you are super committed, you can fully prepare and do very, very well with a 6-week plan. I think that's like ideal. You can maybe do it in 4 weeks or even more if you have more. If you're a regular competitor, then you just got to keep that intensity going, but you got to feel your body. If you feel like you're kind of like burning yourself out, then I recommend take some time off. Kind of thing. But if I had to take someone under my wing and get them prepared for a tournament, 6 weeks, you're mine for 6 weeks.
I know some of the coach out there will have like specific strategy for preparing for competition, and for example, will be the last week you just take it off, you don't do nothing, all you do is review, for example, videos and things like that. Do you have like specific strategy that you could share with our viewers into that preparation or game plan for those who are interested in that topic?
Well, I do understand easing off on the last week. I don't like hard rolls. 3 or 4 days before tournament, just because if someone gets injured, I get upset with them. Just a few days, before the tournament, you paid for it, you're ready, you've been preparing for so long, and then you go and get injured 3 days before. That's disappointing. So I ask them to ease off and just focus on drilling. They can roll, but this again goes back to the trust of training partners. And I try to foster this culture, like, hey, he's competing this weekend. If you're going to roll with him, you're a dummy. And that came from my experiences. I was that guy for a lot of my teammates. If they needed someone to get a few extra rounds of sparring, or if they needed someone to do a few extra rounds of rolling or whatever, I would be like, yeah, I'll do it. And I was always very careful not to injure or be the cause of the injury, because I want them to do well. I want my teammates to succeed. And
you've been injured, so you know how that feels.
Yeah, I know how that feels. So I think you have to create an environment that's very supportive teammate-wise, where teammate supports teammate. Yes, when people say, you have to be selfish and it's just you out there, but you can't prepare by yourself in your basement with your grappling dummy. Okay, you really have to have a team and coaches and supporting staff. So it's important to create that environment. But I also I agree with that as far as like the week before, you got to be smart. But I think that not to give away too many of my secrets, but you have to recreate environment and training that replicates tournaments. So you have to create scenarios and you have to create training drills that are as close to tournament as you can. So whether it's like, even for example, just running a few mock matches, like as if there's a referee in the scoreboard, okay, fight. You also have another thing that I do is like, okay, you're teammates and you care for one another, obviously, and you have to have that care. It's important to have the care for the teammate, but you can't take anything personal. Especially because I expect them to roll hard. In competition class versus the regular class, like in the competition class, you don't give an inch. You are very selfish. You are trying to beat and dominate, and you're a training partner. Your training partner's job is not to take it personal. Your training partner's job is to try and learn and improve and get better so you can push back. Right? Because, yes, you can do the flow and the fun and drilling, but you also have to create these hard environments where you're mounted for 5 minutes and you're tired and you can't get out, and this person's trying to like really put some high intensity on you. Because what I don't want is like if that happens to you in the tournament and you never experienced it before,
Yeah.
I can't trust that how you're going to react.
Right.
You need to like, oh my God, this is too much. I can't handle it. Tap. I'm done.
Yeah.
Right?
And then why wasn't I prepared, right?
Yes, and then who are you going to point fingers at, right? But if you experience the worst in training, then nothing can surprise you in tournaments, right? And you know that if it happens so often in training, and eventually, like, okay, you go through hell for 2 minutes and you come out, and then you go through hell for a few minutes and you come out again, you're going to trust yourself in the tournament when you're in trouble that you're going to come out of it.
Yeah.
Or you have to believe that you're going to come out of it. But the only way you're going to believe in it is if you've done it in training.
Right.
Right?
It sounds very much like preparing for an exam. You have to drill and keep, practicing and gain that confidence and go through all the scenarios possible out there to pass the exam. So I have to ask, for the people who are not like having a career into Jiu-Jitsu, how can they apply all what they learn on the mat in their life?
I think in general, like, I'm only going to speak from my experience because I can't speak for others per se. And I think it's best to always be genuine and say it from your point of view.
Right.
I'm not going to be like, according to this and that, like, that's not how I do things. From my experience, what it has done for my life, and I believe what it did for me can do for others, is I was bullied as a kid, heavily, back home. And I've always been a big introvert. I like being by myself, and I like having me time. And then I came to Canada, and I was the weird kid, because I was like the way people behaved here, and the way things were done here was so different than back home that I can tell because I'm mature enough to understand what happened and who I am now. I was a weird kid. I was a strange kid and did weird things. So I think that some people were maybe rubbed off by it and were like, wow, what's wrong with this guy? But when I started doing martial arts, and because I fell in love with it so quickly, I was so passionate about it, that it gave me guidance. Well, another thing, I don't want to get too much into it, but I had issues in my home with my family and things that was going on that was very negative. So I didn't really have good examples how to behave as a man. I only saw negative examples. So I think that didn't help me in some ways. So martial arts gave me something to focus on.
A structure.
Yes, it gave me something to focus on. I happen to have a little bit of ability, so I was like, wow, I'm not so bad. And when you start, and anything that you have results in, you start to build confidence, right? So the more confidence, the more I would invest, the more time, and then the more confident, more success. So I was very, very fortunate that martial arts gave me the confidence. And more confidence you have, then you start to handle yourself a certain way. So now you're easier to talk to people, right? It became easier to talk to people. It became easier to grow as a man. And then the other thing was like, I left the house when my parents' house when I was fairly young, early 20s, and I went to live by myself. And I grew a lot through that. But during the whole time I was living by myself and learning how to fend for myself, I was training. And I think it's that confidence, that comfortability that you have when you start walking around. And I think that's the empowerment that Jiu Jitsu gives you. When you know you can handle yourself, right? I guess under any situation or duress, everything else seems pretty easy after that.
And you have that discipline to.
Yeah, so talking with people became easier. Interactions with women became easier. I wasn't the weird kid anymore, and that helped a lot. It was just no doubt because of martial arts. So
amazing, very inspiring.
yeah, so definitely it's helped me tremendously, and I think I find a nice balance between being an introvert, which allows me to be the person and the coach that I am, because I do a lot of studying, a lot of reading, and a lot of me time where I come up with all these things. But I also have now the confidence to interact with people. Right? which I think I have the best of both worlds going right now. So I'm pretty happy.
Very well. So going back to competition, just a few more questions here. For those who, arrive into that huge conference room and are, with their headset and trying to warm up in the designated area, what should be going through their mind? Like, what should they be focusing on to get ready for when they are called onto the mat?
Well, just to kind of give you a little bit of a background, when I was competing, it was very chaotic and very, very challenging because the tournaments weren't that organized. The brackets were done the day of. You had to weigh in the morning, and sometimes we didn't fight until 7 at night. So you're there all day. And usually I did the advanced division, so the event, they did the beginners first, advanced after. It was mentally exhausting, and I had some decent performances, but I also had a few performances that I wasn't too happy with, and I think it was because I was just exhausted. Not only am I there weighing in the morning, but then I'm with my teammates, I'm cheering them on, I'm coaching them. That's one other thing I may have with the coaching. I've been coaching since blue belt. I've been coaching my teammates for forever, and I think that gave me a huge edge in experience. So I'm coaching all day, and then it's my turn. Well, not only am I mentally exhausted, I'm physically exhausted. So I performed well, but I've also had some performances that weren't that so great, and I think that was a factor. Now, I'm just trying to make a comparison. You come to today's environment now, it's so much easier because you register way ahead of time. You know exactly when your division is going to run, so you don't have to be there all day. And that, I think, is huge. Now, as far as the coach goes and what I say to my students as a professor, I tell them come an hour before your division. Make sure that you are not distracted by your teammates competing. I know you want to cheer them on. I know you want to be there for them. But that's, again, that watching matches, you may not feel physically drained, but you are mentally drained. So I don't want you watching matches. I want you one there an hour before. You go, you get changed, you get ready, and then have some music that you like. I usually try and tell them, don't go the music that gets you pumped up right away. You know what I mean? Because then you're just going to get all pumped up and you still have 45 minutes to go. So I say, play music that relaxes you, that you like, that you enjoy, that you get into a groove. Right? Almost like it gets you in a good mood. Music that puts you in
uplifts you.
Music that gets you in a good mood and you feel relaxed. And then when they call you your division up, okay, you go weigh in. When you weigh in, after you weigh in, you start warming up a little bit. Nothing crazy. You start warming up. But you want to have a good sweat by the time your first match starts. So you almost want to, it's almost like you want to almost pretend that you already had a match or two. Right? So you want to get your heart rate going, you want to get something going, you want to get high energy.
Wake up your body.
You want to wake up your body as if you had a match or two. You don't want to go out there and no warm up, you're cold, and then you have that energy dump and you're exhausted in the first 30 seconds of the first match, which happens often, right? But that's the what I ask them to do. Now, I'm not going to claim to be a visualization expert. I'm not. Because what worked for me may not work. And I don't believe visualization maybe works for everybody. I think everybody has to find something that works for them. Some might be visualization, some might be music, some might be, taking a nap, right? Before. I know fighters that what they need, they would take a nap and then they'd be good to go, right? So I think everybody's different, and you have to try and trial and error and find your way of doing things. For me, I visualized only one thing all the time, and that was because you can't visualize a jiu-jitsu match. It's so complex. So many things can happen. I mean, you can tell yourself, like, I'm going to visualize my sequences. I'm going to visualize what I'm going to do. I'm going to visualize my first intent, which is to pull guard or go for mental. But what I say is, like, to my guys, is like, if you're having doubts in your head, or if you can't focus on what, just envision one thing. Envision the referee raising your hand. Picture your referee raising your hand, and you're going to be victorious. Raise, you see it in your head, and your hand's going to get raised, my hand's going to get raised.
I love that advice.
And I think that's easy, it's simple, and it's easy to visualize. It's not complex at all. Like, you just see yourself getting your hand raised. And I think that was what I would do all the time. I was like, I'm going to get my hand raised, get my hand raised, get my hand raised. And I would perform well. And I think some of my students have taken that and they've used that. And, it's simple. Now, if they want more in-depth visualization skills, I'm like, I'm not an expert, right? It's the same people when people come to me, hey, Professor, so I want to go on a diet. Like, talking to the wrong guy. Like, I'm not a dietitian. I'm not like a, like, you want me to teach you jiu-jitsu, I can teach you jiu-jitsu. But I'm not a professional in these other fields. Same thing, like, someone gets hurt. Oh, Professor, this hurts. What do you think? I'm like, go see your doctor. Like, just because I had all these injuries doesn't mean I'm going to have the right answers for you. But I think there's professionals, and I think that you should go to professionals if you want to get something proper done. If you're really serious about it, then seek a professional. That's what they're there for. Right? And pay them for it.
You'll get there faster.
Yeah, you're going to get there faster and pay them for it. That's what they're there for.
That's
right? No shortcuts. No shortcuts.
So for those who compete and then rely on you to deconstruct the fights after a tournament, do you have like a methodology, or how do you help them review what took place, whether it was to their performance or they were satisfied with it or not?
Now, it's hard to do that with a large team. I can do that with my students here, but keep in mind I have athletes that train at affiliates, so I coach them at tournaments, but they may not necessarily train with me here. And I can coach anybody. But when it comes to my guys, it's hard. It's hard, and I'm not going to sit here and create some story to make me look like I'm some guru or anything like that. But it's hard only because I have an academy to run. I have a lot of classes that I teach, and if you have like 10, 20 guys, how do you address 10, 20 guys' problems and issues, right? So that is very challenging. Now, what I say is athletes have a responsibility for their own development as well, right? So if they can film their own matches and analyze their own matches, I highly recommend that. If they can't figure out something on their own, then hey, come and see me when I have some time, or we can, figure out a time where we can get together and I will help you. I usually try to make time after class if people have questions, if they want to address anything. I've had lots of students come with their phone and go, hey, Professor, what happened here? And then I will drill with them.
What could I have done better?
Yes. But overall, usually what I do, or I think is more beneficial sometimes, is I'm at tournaments from beginning to end. You've seen me there. I'm there from the beginning of the tournament to the end of the tournament, right?
Without voice at the end.
Yes, without my voice at the end, yes. And when I watch so many matches, I usually, for the day, I find that there's a pattern. That there's something that happens frequently on that particular day. And I'm noticing, that's happening. And that's happening again. Okay. And then if I find that it's a pattern that my guys are having a problem with, that's what I'm going to focus on Monday when I come back. Right? So I'm like, guys, a lot of you guys had an issue with this particular card. Right? And it happened to be the same kind of sequence every time. Here's how you break the sequence. And we'll drill. So you'll notice that the next time they go back out, they're not making that mistake anymore. It's not happening. Right? They go back and smash that situation. Right? I find that it's much easier to control because you're working with the group and fixing one problem at a time, which is much easier to correct than 20 problems. Right? And I think it's worked for me, it's worked for the way I do things, and I will continue to do so.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean I don't spend individual time with my guys. I do, but it's challenging, right? Because I can't come back on Monday and address 20 issues.
Right.
Because I go, if I correct 20 issues, you're not going to remember all of them. But if I do one,
The main one.
the main problem that everybody had that tournament,
Yeah.
it's corrected, and it doesn't happen again. Right? So I think that's a good strategy.
Very good. So let's move on to Jiu-Jitsu, the sport, and techniques. We talked about the all Jiu-Jitsu a little bit. Where do you see the landscape right now of where is Jiu-Jitsu at as a sport, as an art, and where does self-defense fit into that whole training?
I'm going to be honest, Florence, I'm going to keep it short because I think we need to eventually get to the main event, and it's talking about yoga and the importance of yoga. So I'm going to keep it short because I think this is a topic that I've addressed so many times already. I was brought up in Jiu-Jitsu with Master Baron, who's like very well known for self-defense. We know this even till today.
Yeah.
So I was very fortunate that I learned all self-defense. So I'm fortunate, again, that I can do that and teach that in my academy. And I make sure that I do that with my novice, with my beginners. So my beginners, they do self-defense and they do the fundamental sport techniques. They do both in the curriculum. But there is an issue with, that's not the majority. The majority of academies focus just on sport. And I think there's a couple of factors why that happens. One, the sport, you get more instant gratification.
Yeah.
Like you are live, hands-on, it's happening right now. Where the self-defense, it takes time to get good at, and it takes this kind of progressive kind of learning how to do it properly, and then you can increase the intensity, right? Which is, again, I believe you should do both, and I think there's room in academies to do both. Just put it in your novice program, and then if later on when you just go into the sport, that's okay too. But ultimately, I think a lot of it has also to do with the country you live in and how safe it is. And I think people initially come into the academies for self-defense. Initially, people come in because they want to learn how to defend themselves.
Yeah.
But once you get the bug with the sport, it's hard to bring them back to the self-defense, right?
Yeah.
They just they fall in love with the sport, and that's what they want to do.
Like interest.
Yeah, so I think there's room for both, and I think academies can do it. It is doable. You gotta have tiers. You gotta have your novice, where you do your self-defense and your basics. You gotta have your intermediate, where it could be anybody that just wants to enjoy the sport for fun.
Yeah.
And they have no interest in competition. They just want to enjoy the sport, and they just want to enjoy the art.
Yeah.
And then you gotta have the competition class, which is kill or be killed, train hard, go win medals.
Yeah.
Right? And I think academies need to start finding these levels and providing these classes in your academy, not just for or putting everybody together, beginners, advanced, competitors. It doesn't work anymore. That's not professional anymore, and it's not the way of the future.
So you spend a lot of time growing your women's team and empowering women through the classes, different competition team as well. What do you think will it take today to bring more women into the community?
This has been a big challenge for me too, for a very long time. I was lucky enough that a period of time there I had a really good women's team and up to 10 women training at the same time, and it was great. But I think there's so many obstacles that come with women training in Jiu-Jitsu, and you got to put yourself in their shoes and see and go, what are those? Well, it's a male-dominated sport, and for every woman, there's 40 men on the mats, so you're always constantly rolling with men all the time, and that could be problematic. And then, there's not enough women to compete in the division, so you might get tired of like, man, I'm signing up and there's only one person and I'm competing against the same person all the time. I don't want to compete anymore because I'm just wasting my money.
Yeah.
So the divisions don't have enough depth in them to really, I mean locally anyway, but it's getting better. From when I started, nothing to now, there's actually some good divisions going.
Right.
But if you look at it, like there's adult masters men all the way from purple to black belt competing locally.
Yeah.
You don't see the same with the women.
No, not yet.
Not yet. I think in general, if you look at, I think women overall have a hesitancy of doing martial arts. They're not comfortable with the idea of doing martial arts. And I think martial arts academies and instructors are doing a disservice by when they come in, throwing them into
The lion's
full
cage.
men's class, competition class. Well, that's not going to work. Right? There's only a select few women that are going to thrive in that environment, right? And maybe the more athletic, who have previous sports experience, okay, they tend to stick around a little bit longer.
Right.
But if you have no sport experience and you come into that environment, man, it's not going to. So that's why again I go back to it's important that you have the tiers, the levels of novice. For example, in my novice program, you're not allowed to roll for a certain amount of time. Right?
Yeah.
Not
Get
allowed to
comfortable
roll.
first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think there's definitely some challenges. And the other big challenge, I think, is that, again, I'm not knocking anyone for this, it's just life, is, you get a career, you potentially get married, you want to have a family, and that sometimes derails, the idea of training martial arts. You may get into it, but then once you have a family and children, you're like, I don't have the time for it, or I can't do it anymore. So that's
the body doesn't want.
well, yes, and so there's. I wish we have to. It has to be a two-way street, right? More women need to give jiu-jitsu a try, but academy owners need to provide a better service, right? Whether it's women-only classes or start with self-defense only first, and then maybe get a few of them to cross over into the sport, and make it a gradual, introduction, and make it fun and safe. And I think there would be a lot more women training. Absolutely.
Good point.
I'm trying, but it is again. But if there's not enough women trying the classes in the first place, then it's very, very challenging.
Very good. So talking about tiers, how do you feel about adjusting the age limitation on attaining belts? You see a lot of young competitors out there like Nicky Ryan or the twins, Kate and Ty Rotolo, who almost at reach of a black belt and almost at their 20s.
I agree with what the IBJJF is doing. I think what people forget are these are exceptional individuals who all they do is train, and they have the support of their families. And they train 8 hours a day, so they're not even in school anymore. They're done high school, and that's it, they're training. And if their future is going to be jiu-jitsu, and I think their parents understand that. So there's a certain amount of talent and support that comes with these. And people have to realize these are exceptions, not the norm. So we cannot change the IBJJF rules for a few exceptions, right? Then I agree that the way the IBJJF has that you have to be 18 years of age to be a black belt. I think that's age of responsibility, right? Age of maturity at some point, like that's when you have to be a responsible adult, especially in Canada. You're not allowed to drink and drive and all this other stuff. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and even get a job. But there's a certain level of responsibility that comes, and that's the idea. It's like you got to be at an age where it's accepted by society that you're now.
Because you're gonna become a role model, so people want to have.
You have to be responsible because of what potentially might happen, right? But that being said, when you have these types of kids, and they're literally rolling through, like just beating the hell out of grown men in competitions, or they're so good, like if I'm a 16-year-old kid and I'm going to a 16-year-old division and I'm just completely dominating other 16-year-olds and submitting all of them within 2 minutes, I think the IBJJF needs to keep an eye on that and make exceptions. But I think they should only make exceptions if that's the case, like you are winning, dominating, clearly above and beyond everybody in your division, in your age group. Okay, then you can maybe make an exception and allow them to compete as adults. The whole issue is about, okay, if you're going to allow them to compete as adults, why not? They have adult. Let them compete at adult purple. Let them compete at adult brown. Let them compete at adult black. Right?
He needs to challenge.
He needs to be pushed, right? But I think it should make exceptions, and there should be some kind of situations where you can allow it. But I don't think you should change the rules for everybody. Yeah. You know, because then everybody's going to want to compete at that level or want to move up sooner, and then you're going to end up with, you know, academies taking advantage and being like, oh, all my 15-year-olds are black belts now because I need more black belts. So it becomes like a problem of people taking advantage of the rules for financial gain.
Yeah, or opening Pandora's box.
Yeah. So
what do you feel are the main issues in Jiu-Jitsu right now?
I think we're doing really well. We're progressing along. My biggest issue is that I wish we were more mainstream. I think if you were covered by sports channels like other sports, if we were on TV more like other sports, and being followed by the media more and the newspapers more, then the sport would grow and we'd have more people doing jiu-jitsu, the academies would flourish, everybody would be happy in an ideal world. Right? But we're not mainstream yet, so we have a lot of work to do when it comes to that. I think the rules, there's so many different rule sets, but I know that a lot of people are not happy with the IBJJF rules. I'm not either. I think there's a few things that I don't particularly like. And the idea is like, if we're going to bring more attention to the sport, if we're going to make it more mainstream, then you need to make it more viewer-friendly. Right? So it needs more excitement. You can't have excitement when you have black belts having 10-minute matches and for 8 minutes they're 50-50 and they do nothing. Right? And that happens way more than I would like. And I find it boring. And a lot of black belts are just not willing to take the risk because that medal is so important to them. And it is, because a lot of the times those gold medals are opportunities for them in the future, whether it's owning an academy or a sponsorship or so on and so on. So they're not willing to take any risks.
Showing their accomplishments.
Yes. So I think that a shorter time limit would be better. It would force the action a little bit more. And I have a few other ideas for rules too, but I think that you need to look at it as how do you make it viewer-friendly? How do you get more action in the sport so people, when they're watching, they're excited to watch instead of going, man, what are these guys sitting on their butt for 7 minutes? This is boring. What are they doing? Why are they doing that? Right? They need a scoreboard that's clearer because if you have advantages, points, penalties, what's what, like as an average consumer, I'm going to go, what are all those numbers, right? If there was just one score, it'd be much easier to follow. And again, we're talking about how do we make it viewer-friendly for the average person who's just going to watch. They don't even participate. They just like to watch the sport. So I think that's the two main things. One, we needed to get it to the mainstream, and two, we need to make it more viewer-friendly. So we need to look at that rule set and how do we do that. Right? So those are the two big things.
Very nice. How do you plan to operate with the current COVID situation? Of course, we haven't gotten the green light yet. Do you have any thoughts onto how things will evolve from here?
I think academies can't open them
Mm-hmm.
under the OJA jurisdiction, the Ontario Jiu Jitsu Association. You can get the green light from them and go through the process and get certified, and you'll be able to open. But there's so many protocols and safety protocols and restrictions, and some academies are willing to do that, and more power to them. Others are not willing to do that. Everybody has their own reasons whether or not they want to do this. 10 people only, solo drills, no contact, no rolling.
Yeah.
And so each academy has to, ultimately, I'm not going to get into too much detail, but every academy owner has to look at it from a financial standpoint and where they are, and whether or not this is just the way to go or this is the way to go.
Yeah.
Right? Either way, it's going to be a bit before we can get back to regular jiu-jitsu, regular classes, rolling, and all that. I think that's only past phase 3. I don't even think, are we in phase 2 yet in Toronto? I don't even know. So there you go. That should give you an idea that we need to go through phase 2 first, and then phase 3 before we can actually roll and have regular classes. But if you want to open like now, contact the OJA, find out from them what you need to do, what safety protocols you got to follow, but understand that it's a progressive, slow, methodical process where, okay, first only 10 people in the building, you got to clean after every class, you have to do all these safety protocols, so you're going to have to run a lot more classes to adhere to your student base. And then, okay, maybe more people are going to be allowed, and then maybe they start allowing partner training, still no rolling, and then eventually more partner training, and then group training, and then back to normal. Okay, so it's going to be, you have to be patient. And I've been saying this a lot lately, and that's about, pretend you got an injury, right? Say if I blew my knee, and I needed to have surgery, I'd be out for a year, right? I wouldn't be able to train or roll for a year. Okay? So we're, 6 months in?
6 months.
So still have another 4 months before the 1 year, if you were to think about if I had an injury. So if you can be patient enough to go through a year where you can't train because of an injury, a serious injury, then think of it as this is a serious injury, it's a serious situation, you're not going to be able to train. Do other things, right? So for example, if I had an injury, what would I be doing? Physio. I'd be doing a lot of physio to rehab. I'd be rehabbing the knee, right? Okay, what else can you do? How else can you stay fit? How else
Take care
can
of
you
your health, eat healthy.
Yeah, exactly. Study, learn something new. Take the time to do an online course and learn something new. I've done 2 online courses, to try and pick up, and then I'm going to pick up another one that I want to get into, which is I'm trying to get better at public speaking. So I'm going to be doing a public speaking course. Again, just don't let this discourage you or derail you. Just change your mindset, change your focus into how you're going to, so when we do come back, because that's the plan, right? How are you going to be better as a professor, as an academy owner, as a business owner, as a person? Again, we're talking within the jiu-jitsu world. A lot of other people are already back to work out there. But just find ways to get better, find ways to keep you busy so you don't gravitate towards the negativity or the doom and gloom. Oh my God, this is horrible, and I'm going to lose my business and all this other stuff.
Reinvent yourself.
Reinvent yourself. And just think everything through before you make decisions. Look at every possible aspect. And that's what I did with Ram, my business partner. We looked at every possible aspect and what is the best course of action for us. And that's what we're sticking with.
When you think about invisible jiu-jitsu, what comes to your mind?
I know that Master Hickson Gracie has this thought processing, and a lot of people have experienced what he's talking about. I think if I have to explain it, it's more like you can teach technique, but sensory. Right? He's talking about that connection that you make with someone and understanding what is happening that can't be explained in the process of like, oh, you go here and you go there. You feel it, right? There's a certain feeling and sensation of weight distribution, and it's invisible in the sense that you can't like pinpoint, oh, there it is, right? No, it's understanding your body, and that takes time, and understanding how it connects to the other person's body, and how you can transfer energy, and to make things happen, and to put yourself in the proper position with your body to be more efficient than your opponent, right? And sometimes it is invisible in a way that you can't explain it, you know, in a step-by-step technical term, right? Like, oh, it's omoplata. Well, but what's happening in between all of that? There is more to it than just like, okay. And that I think that's what they're referring to as far as the visible. Is like it's hard to point it out because it's all about sensitivity. It's how you sensing it, how you feeling it as it's happening. Right?
So when I think about invisible jiu-jitsu, yoga comes up because yoga teaches you how to learn about your physical limitation, your physical body, your energy, and in return you're learning about somebody else's energy and physical body. So that's why when I started to train jiu-jitsu very fast, I felt that connection, and that's what I love the most about putting two and two together, where the yoga helps me with mobility, with flexible body, with the breath, and all this is so important into the sport, into being a well-rounded athlete. I'd love to hear from you what's your experience with yoga and what are your thoughts on how it can help your students.
I mean, I guess just to clarify, my only yoga experience that I've ever had was with you as an instructor at the old location, and I was very, very happy to have that refresher class that we did last week, and I was really, really happy to learn about the breathing exercises that you're teaching now, and obviously the yoga and the stretching. But let's just go back to my first experiences with it, which was taken originally. Obviously, there was that hesitation, you know, because Jiu-Jitsu is a tough man sport, and I came from MMA, and you know, and then you always get this stigma that yoga is for women, and you know, and I'm a tough guy, right? But I try not to have a closed mind, and I mean, and when you hear, you know, stories of other people that start to speak about the value in it, and how great it is, and how much it's helped them. And me having a lot of physical issues, I'm like, man, I'm dealing with a lot of chronic pain at the time. I had some issues, and so I'm like, I'm willing to try anything that's going to help me deal with my problems. And what I found with my experiences with yoga was that there's a few things that kind of stood out for me. I was like, man, I wish I could do this more often. One was just relaxing, right? Because stress of life, the stress of running an academy, the stress of running a team, being responsible for athletes and competitors, you feel like there's a lot of weight on your shoulders. Yeah. And I felt like I was able to relax during the classes and just kind of like let it go. The other thing that I felt was like super like one of the most important points, and we spoke about this last week, was with Jiu-Jitsu, you're always so compact and tight and pulling in and close and defending, and everything is so compact and tight, and then eventually you almost like walk around like that, right? And with the yoga, everything is about opening and stretching and get everything out and opening up
and lengthening
and lengthening and extending, and I felt like this is the perfect counterbalance for Jiu-Jitsu. You know, I think you need to find that balance between. If you just stick too much to one thing, it's not it's not good for your body. You need to find a balance, and I think that yoga is a good balance for jiu-jitsu, especially for competitors.
Yeah.
And the stretching and again, when you bring the stretching to, like, yes, you're loosening up the joints, you're getting the flow of blood flow and things, and for injuries, I think that's super important.
Right.
I think what happens with athletes is, they train so hard and then they go home, they take a shower, they go to bed. And I think that when you're putting your body to that much duress, you need something to alleviate some of that. And I think yoga brings that level of relaxation and of course the third point is the breathing. I think when you're so tense sometimes that you forget to breathe when you're, especially in the lower ranks, right? You just hold your breath and hope, and then you get tired and you freak out. And I think that the breathing, if you can focus a little bit more on the breathing when you're training, and I think sometimes it's good because sometimes you overthink too much, and then you underperform. That if you just focus on the breathing, you would perform better, right? Because you don't let your mind go everywhere. So I think those three things: the stretching for blood flow, and these are things that you told me as well, and I agree. The expansion of your body versus like always being so compact and tight, and the breathing, and these are all like strong elements of yoga. Right?
It's like the yin and the yang.
Yes, I think I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to find more time once we go back to normal. I know that you're working on a program that you're potentially going to be put online. I think that'd be great because I think a lot of times it's hard for people to just go to a regular yoga class. Then maybe if they can do something at home.
So stay tuned, guys. I'm working on really
working
hard.
on it, and I would love to find a way to potentially bring it back here to the academy like we did in the other place. If not for my students, then for selfish reasons.
But I do agree on your point though that when you train, and then you're putting so much strain onto your body, guys, please do stretch. Do me this favor, not for me, for your body. Be kind to it because that's the number one way that you can have injuries. So do stretch. What do you think will it take for gyms, jiu-jitsu or martial art gyms to have like a mandatory yoga program for their students?
I think it's the same kind of aspect that I was talking about, like what does it take jiu-jitsu to go to the next level, and that's getting to mainstream. How do you get yoga into more jiu-jitsu academies? It's I think potentially a slower process, and that's, guys, I don't want to make myself to be this big thing, but I think academy owners or team leaders, guys who are a little bit more influential in the BJJ community, if they start to talk more and more about it, I think more and more people, like I said, like myself, I heard how from other people speaking about it, other BJJ.
So you need those influencers.
Yeah, you need more people that can speak up for yoga, who are already jiu-jitsu. Like, if all the black world champion black belts came out tomorrow and said, yoga is the way, you need to do yoga, I think a lot of academy owners would be like, oh, if all the world champions are saying that, then we should do that too. So I think it's the only way to influence the masses is to have influencers and people that people look up to, and then the more big names in the jiu-jitsu world speak about yoga and its positive effects, and I think more and more academies are going to start to add yoga into their programs.
I did ask Buchacha when I met him if he is doing yoga. He said it's his next things on his to-do list. So it's coming.
It's kind of hard to argue with the guy though. Like, whatever he's doing is working because he's won 12 world championships or whatever. That's crazy, man.
I want to touch on to the breathing. So what we've done with Michael last week was a method called Wim Hof breathing, which is so powerful. And Michael is not here with us today, but I remember he was very skeptical.
Yes.
And he was making that point that he was skeptical about the method. So basically, before the Wim Hof breathing, Marco and Michael did a set of push-ups, and then once you go through the 3 cycles of the Wim Hof method, you realize that your body is more oxygenized, alkaline, and through that you have within you like an amazing power. And what happens is the magic. You do more push-ups, and it's like an eye-opener. So how many push-ups did you do before the breathing, and how many did you do after, and what was your experience? Like, tell us about your experience.
Well, you forgot to mention that you had to do the push-ups while holding your breath.
Oh yeah, while holding the breath, that too.
I mean, I think Michael would have been the better example, only because I was like doing push-ups on my knees. I'm still doing a lot of rehab and physio for my shoulder, but I can still be honest and say I only did like 13 the first time, on the first attempt before we got started. And I didn't stop doing the push-ups because I'm holding my breath. It's just my shoulders started to bug me a little bit, and I was like, I'm going to stop. But after going through the sequence with you and the experience, and like for me, I was all in. I don't know about Michael, but I'm committed to doing something. I'm not gonna be like whatever. No, I was in. I'm gonna do this right, and I'm gonna do it the way it's supposed to be done. And by the end of it, I was able to hold my breath, and I think I did 40 push-ups.
Yeah. So a little bit more than double. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Good job. So there you go, guys. Meditation, yoga, breathing, it does work. You need to believe in it and give it a fair try.
Honestly, I've been thinking about that experience since then, and I'm like, how do I do that with my athletes, right? And how do I do that so they can do more, and I can push them harder, right?
So they realize how much more potential they have.
Yeah, how much further they can go, and how much effort they can put in. Instead of giving up after 45 minutes of training because you're exhausted. Okay, you put them to 10-15 minutes of this, and then we're going to go another half hour, and then they're ready to go for another half hour.
Yeah, because the whole nervous system was reset.
Yeah, so I'm like, for me, it's like I want to do it. Is how do I manage the time of the class, right? Because I think they would have to do the three sets. Yeah. I don't think I can get them to do it.
I'll just show up at the door for 15 minutes.
I mean, it wasn't that complicated.
No.
I think I can do it on a base level and see how it affects them. Yeah. It's almost like I want to experiment with it and see what it does. Yeah. And if we could be onto something here that nobody else is doing, right? So I'm like, I'm curious to how can I do this with the guys. I know they're gonna at first be like, oh, what the hell is Professor doing? Yeah. But I think if you can get them to push through and see how much, wow, look, I can go hard, super hard, and get more out of it, then I think, listen, anytime you want to make a believer or something, it's with results, right? And I think that, that's the example you set. Like, I only did 13 and then I did 40. It's a result.
Holding your breath.
Yeah, holding my breath. So it's a result. Yeah.
Instant.
Yeah.
15 minutes.
And that's the thing. Like, I think people are skeptical at first about things, but you can't deny results. And I'd be interested to see where that would go. It's definitely on my to-do list.
To be continued.
Yes.
So let's shift into mindset. When you are feeling down, in terms of uncertainty or you have negative emotions, where do you find inspiration? How do you pull yourself back on track?
I'm going to be 100% honest and say that I struggle with this. Confidence wasn't as you know from what we spoke previously, it wasn't my strong suit. I still struggle to this day with that, believing in yourself and all this other stuff. luckily for me, I have a track record of success, so I remind myself of the things that I've done and what I've accomplished, and that I can do it again. Right? Maybe not in the same way, but I can still do things, and again, you have to have a history of that to back that up. If you don't have a history, this is where it gets a little bit more challenging, I think, for people, that if you always have negative results, then it's going to be harder for you to come out of that. That's when you need a support system, right? That's when you need, like, when people, for example, when people are dealing with mental health disorders and they're having issues, and then you hear about suicide. These things are because, again, maybe the support wasn't there, the support system wasn't there. So, for me, again, I have a track record, so that's what brings me back. Like, okay, you've done this stuff before, you've had hurdles before, you've had obstacles, unbearable obstacles that you didn't think you were going to get out of it, and you did. So having, like, these overcoming all the time, then it makes it easier to push through.
Yeah.
And I think people just have to accept that life is ups and downs. That there's no way you're going to live your whole life and it's 100% perfect.
Right.
You're going to have things that you're going to have to push through. And there's a couple of things that one, I remember, I think Professor Costa told me, it's like, doing the right thing is hard work, right? That doing wrong is easy. Anybody can do wrong, but to do the right things is hard work. So if you having struggles and you are working, you're pushing through, you got to remind yourself that, hey, I'm trying to do the right thing here.
You will pay off eventually.
Yeah, it's going to pay off eventually. And the other thing that reminds me is, like, if you look at your whole life, for every negative experience, just around the corner there was a massive positive experience, right?
Yeah.
It's ups and downs.
So you just happen not to see it right away.
Yeah, you just don't see it. You don't know what's around the corner until you get there. I think another analogy is, like, I don't surf, but I know a lot of people love surfing, but it's a good analogy. Like, when there's no waves, you just be patient. So if things are not going your way, and just be patient. Right? Work things through. Like, don't let it rattle you. Be patient. But when that wave comes, right, when that positive stuff is happening,
you're ready.
Be ready and enjoy the hell out of it. Like, really take it in and really have fun with it. Yeah. So if things are going good, write it out. Just do.
I love that.
You know what I mean? Just enjoy the moment. Enjoy what's going on. Yeah. Don't take it for granted. When things are not going so good, be patient. Be patient. Understand that the wave eventually comes, right? But if you focus too much on the bad, the positive is never going to come. Right? So
I think there's also the aspect of taking failure too much too hard.
Yeah, too hard.
We are in a world where we have instant gratification. We go on Facebook, we get our likes. Instagram, you get all those likes, and you just forget to take failure as a learning, as a growth opportunity, as opposed to telling yourself, oh my God, why did I not succeed? Why did I go wrong? No, you didn't go wrong. You just have to do it better next time.
I think people forget that humanity is flawed. Right? We all have flaws. Nobody's perfect. Right? And as long as you do your best to your abilities, and I think sometimes, especially in the BJJ world, there's too much comparison, and that could be like, you can't compare yourself to a world champion. Like, that's almost, for most people, it's unattainable, right? So I think you have to be realistic with yourself and your goals, and focus on your goals, and try not to compare yourself to anyone else. You're you. You're your unique self, and you got to find your path, and try not to, like, especially within Jiu Jitsu, you have to be an individual in Jiu Jitsu and find your way. You can't be like, oh, I'm going to be like this guy, I'm going to be like that guy. I think you're using for inspiration, obviously, but you are you. Be proud of who you are.
There's a great book out there for those who want to understand the ego better. It's from Eckhart Tolle, A New Earth. It's an amazing book. So the ego is something that we can use to our advantage, but a lot of time it's taking over and controlling us, and it's time it's not easy to become aware of it. Yeah. And that book shed a lot of light on it, so I recommend it to everybody.
Yeah. It's funny you said that, because a lot of I've had conversations before with individuals about stuff, and like, what's the two biggest problems, or when something happens, how does it happen? Mm-hmm. It's ego or money, or both. Right? If you take the ego out of it and just look at it logically and have a conversation, you can probably find a solution, right? But the ego gets involved.
Yeah. So get out of your mind and go into your heart.
Yes.
If you could choose 3 people to be on your advisory board to help you lift your game and be a leader in the marketplace, who would it be and why?
Off the top of my head, I would say Fabio Jurgel. Mm-hmm. He's the one of the main leaders of the Alliance team, mm-hmm. and they are the how many time world champions? Yeah. Like they've been the number 1 team for like almost 20 years. It's crazy. They've gone on 10 years in a row where they've won the team title. But not just because of that, but because he's doing a really good job on, and he's trying now to teach other academy owners to be successful entrepreneurs and business and academy owners. Mm-hmm. And he's trying to change the way academy owners run academies in Brazil. And bringing that, the tier system that I was talking about, like novice program, intermediate program, competition team, kids program, women's only program, right? So I really like the way he does things, and I try to model a lot of what I do here and what he does. So I really, he would be someone that I would really like to have. That's tough because there's so many good people out there. I like to have conversations with John Danaher, obviously, because of the way he creates systems, and how systematic he is to his approach. And he can tell he's extremely intelligent, and I like to have conversations with smart people. Mm-hmm. Because I could learn a lot. I'm not that smart, so I can appreciate intelligence. And that's the thing, like, you have to appreciate things, whether it's art or music or intelligent people, right? Mm-hmm. You have to respect that certain ability, right? Yeah. So he would be number 2. Number 3, I'm gonna hate to say this one, but he's the one that's popping in my head right now, and I would say Joe Rogan, only because of what he's done with himself, and $100 million is nice. He's managed to bring something like what we're doing right now, which is just podcasting live, inspiring us to do it. And he's done it to the point where he's now very, very well compensated for it. And the fact that he didn't just stick to like the MMA or comedians, he went everywhere. Mm-hmm. His guests have been from all walks of life. Yeah. And he's had some really interesting people on the show. He's also had, people on his show, and I'm like, why? Why you have that kind of? But I mean, it's all good. It's all learning lessons. The thing is, I'm gonna be honest and say I'm not his biggest fan. Yeah. Because I think sometimes, as a fighter, some of the things he says in the corner, I'm like, what are you talking about, man? Like, as a commentator for the UFC, I'm not his biggest fan. Mm-hmm. But as the Joe Rogan podcast person, I'm his fan. Yeah. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I think those 3 people are, good company.
And he has some pretty good questions. He's a very curious individual, so you always learn with him, that's for sure. Before we close off with the rapid fire question, I want to ask about Coffee with Costa. how did the idea get prompted, and also what have your biggest learning been as a host, and as what you've learned from the content that your guests have brought into the show?
The Coffee with Costa started with a vlog idea where I was just doing 20 minutes, and what I wanted to do was give an option to my academy, my affiliates, and the people that are involved with the BO4 team, a platform where they could hear me speak about Jiu-Jitsu and my views and how I see things and my opinions in the Jiu-Jitsu world. So it started more with just for my team and my students.
Yeah.
So it was just a vlog format that I was sharing with the team. And I also, obviously, I've always tried to have foresight as to how the industry is going and how to continue to be a part of it. I don't want to be a dinosaur. I don't want to get left behind as a coach, as an academy owner, as a business, as an entrepreneur. I don't want to I think you need to stay up with the times. And obviously everything is going online.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay. And the truth is, I was very uncomfortable about the whole camera idea.
Yeah.
I didn't like it. It made me feel very uncomfortable, very, I don't know how to explain it. I just didn't like it. But I'm like, I'm going to force myself. And I think that relates again to Jiu-Jitsu and life. Is okay, when you're forced with an uncomfortable situation, you can either shy away from it or you can just find a way to deal with it and adapt. Yeah. And I'm trying to adapt. Yeah. Right? So I started with that. But then I'm like, well, I had a few conversations. I knew that, okay, if I'm just going to keep it within the vlog, it's going to be simple, it's going to be short, and I'm not going to make it more than what it is. And I also said if the opportunity arises where I'm going to make it bigger, like an actual podcast, then I need a partner. And that's the thing, I always believe in working with people. Same thing that I have a business partner for the academy. Yeah. I believe in working with people. I like working with people. Yeah. It just makes things so much easier. And I like sharing the experiences. Yeah. So Michael happened to have a situation where he has a lot of equipment. His cameras and his mics. And he was planning on doing, and he is doing his own thing.
And he's a super marketing pro expert. So if you guys need help, he's the guy.
And he had experience in it, and he already had he was already working on his own thing. He grappled, and I did an interview with him for his channel, and we got started talking. And I'm like, listen, man, I really want to make this Coffee with Costa a bigger thing. I wanted to now go beyond my team and maybe just the local community, like the local BJJ community. Everybody sees me at the tournaments all the time. I'm friends with pretty much everybody, all the other instructors and things like that. And I just wanted to share my story a little bit with. So it wasn't just about having guests. It was about me speaking about Jiu-Jitsu to the community and how I see things. Yeah. And I wanted the community to get to know me a little bit better. So that was kind of the next step. But I needed someone to work with. Michael stepped up and said, yes, I will work with you. We worked something out where it's beneficial to both of us. And then we just started doing, because of COVID, we couldn't do this kind of get-together thing. So we went with the Instagram lives. So we started with the Instagram lives. And yes, Michael did a fantastic job in converting the lives into the YouTube channel. So he's doing a phenomenal job. Eventually, like, okay, we got to go beyond this. We want to be able to have more than just 1 hour. So we went to StreamYard and we just started that. We're only 3 episodes in. And that seems to be working fairly well for us as well. But eventually we want to do like in-person guests and actually have like a real podcast. We have some real interesting angles as to what I want to do with the podcast. Once we get back to normal, I'm not sharing that yet. But it's going to be different than what everybody else is doing. So I want to do that. And again, it's just trying to get to the community and provide some positivity and provide some content that is going to benefit the community and be positive and not a lot of other stuff out there that's way too negative. I'm not a fan of. But that's the idea, is to contribute to the local community. I don't know if I'm ever going to have a big enough personality to be a Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm more of a grassroots
You'll
local.
leave that to Michael.
Yeah, I'll leave that to Michael.
All right, well, just to be mindful of the time, we'll get into the rapid fire questions. So, questions, whatever comes to mind, just the top answer. Okay, we'll make the answer very short.
I'll try.
Okay. What new habit did you create?
A new habit that I've created? Yoga.
Ooh.
Have to.
What's next on your bucket list?
Next on my bucket list is to finish up reading these 2 books that I'm taking forever to get through.
All right. How many gis do you own, and which one is your favorite?
I'm very, very fortunate to be sponsored by Maeda Canada and Fighters Market Canada, and I have 7 gis, I believe. I would have more, but sometimes I'm kind and I give them away to needy guys. I have, I think, 7 on the rotation, and my favorite is the Fujin by Maeda. Oh, I love that gi. So good.
What do you want your life to stand for?
Fair.
What are your top 2 values?
Top 2 values. Honesty and, again, that fairness. I like that when you are people that you find a middle ground that's fair for everybody, whatever that is.
What are the 3 foods that fuel your energy?
That fuel my energy. Acai. I love acai. Coffee. Come on. I don't know if that's a food, but coffee fuels my energy. Fuel my energy.
Bread?
No. I love bread, but definitely not. Cheap shot.
Third one that comes to mind? No? No. All right. Let's move on. What book are you most likely to give out as a gift?
Book that I'm most likely to give. Well, it depends on who you. This is a vague question. It depends on who you're gifting the book to.
To your team.
To my team?
Yeah. We were talking about that Japanese book. Remember? I got one. Ryan Holiday, Obstacle is the Way.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's a good one.
That's a good one.
What is your competition theme song?
Competition. You know, I only had one professional fight, and I came out to a hip-hop version of the Imperial March from Star Wars.
Very nice.
So it was like a remix of the Star Wars Imperial March.
Good answer.
I'm a huge Star Wars fan.
Marco, I wanted to take a few minutes just to acknowledge you for everything you're doing for your team, for the community, all the projects, the things you're working on. I want to acknowledge you for doing personal growth, your public speaking course. I think that's amazing. Everybody should be inspired. I am inspired by that. And you always have your students' first interest at heart. So that's really, really amazing. This beautiful academy. When things open up, guys, come for Sunday rolls, right?
Sunday open mats.
Sunday's open mat.
Everybody's welcome.
So before we close up, any final remarks?
I would like to thank my amazing wife and my kids. They are my world and why I put so much effort forward. My team, the body of 4 team leaders and what they do for the team, I would not be where I am today if it wasn't for them. It's a group effort. They put in a lot of work to make the team where it is. It's not me that's done that. It's been a group effort. Thank you to all the guys that supported the Professor Costa show and that are tuning in every week to check it out. And last but not least, definitely Maeda Canada and Jeff and his lovely wife and how wonderful they treat me. I'm very grateful for all of that.
Beautiful. So for anybody who you know has missed the show, it will be posted on my Facebook. I will also link it to my YouTube channel, Jiu Jitsu Yoga. Subscribe it, guys. Share and support as well. For anybody who wants to reach out to you and learn more about you, where can they find you?
I think right now the best thing would be to just hit me up on Instagram. It's Prof Costa BJJ, P-O-R-F, Costa BJJ.
Beautiful.
On Instagram, that would be the best way.
And any feedback, guys, on Go With the Flow episodes, if you have any recommendation of future guests that should be on, please send me a personal message. Would love to hear. And thank you again for viewing and being with us the whole way. I know it's a bit long, but I hope you all got something out of it. This is for you, and I'm very, very happy to have been the host today. So see you next time, guys.
Thank you very much, Florence.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Bye, guys.